Welcome to Fuzzybutts and Friends. Well, as much as it drives Fuzzybutts all over this place absolutely crazy when they hear me say it, I am the host of this show, your big dog, Luke Robinson, and I'm back again with you this week. And look over there to the left of me, who's also back with us again this week. It's Ginger Morgan. She's our co-host, co-producer, and she's also the executive director of the Puppy Up Foundation. Ginger, how are you?
I am doing well, Luke. I'm really excited about our guest today. So let's go. Let's just go right in. I'll skip talking about the weather.
That's good. I think it's getting to springtime, so I think we can just skip over that. It's warming up around the country. Yes, I am too. We've met our guest before, and just a well-round, interesting person to talk to as always. And he's got a new venture. And on that note, I'd like to introduce our guest this week. It's David Haworth. He's with Embark Vet. Is it Embark Vet or just Embark?
It's Embark Veterinary, but most of the time we just refer to it as Embark.
Embark. All right. Welcome again to Fuzzybutts and Friends. David, how are you?
Luke, thanks very much. Great to see you guys again. It is a joy to be here. And
I'm a big supporter. We're Ginger and I are both big supporters of everything that you do. You've done a lot. You've helped out the Fuzzybutts all around the world, a whole bunch. So on that note, just for our new audience members that haven't watched the episode with you, as you know, we like to start it off with the Fuzzybutts. So I can't remember, David. Do you have Fuzzybutts?
I have two Fuzzybutts, and they're both sleeping within about 30 feet of where I'm talking. Two golden retrievers, two beautiful dogs, an old guy who's about 11 years old who just got his teeth cleaned last week, and so I was worried throughout that whole process. Even the more you know, the more you worry. And he's great. He's a cancer survivor, mast cell tumor about 5 years ago, taken care of, has done great. And then we've got a new little 2.5-year-old Breckenridge who is also just a joy to be around. Those are my Fuzzybutts, at least now. I think over the years, we counted them up recently. I think we've had 14 or 15 dogs and 7 cats, or we're winding things down, I think.
You're what I call.
Look at you getting your dogs claimed during pet dental month.
I was unintentional, I will admit, but yeah, early in my career, I had something to do with a vaccine against periodontal disease, and know more about tooth health in dogs than probably is healthy for anybody to know about.
Ginger, you always jumped the gun a little bit. I had you not jumped in on that, I would teach you up perfectly. I would have said, "Hey, Ginger, David clearly listened to the last episode of Fuzzybutts and Friends."
Well, he did. I'm quite sure he did.
Dental Awareness Month. So, well, you have a setup like I do, where it's actually I'm moving Fuzzybutts Studios. So as you can see, it looks different. My background looks different this week, but I'll have the banner and everything set up pretty soon. But I always seem to be in a setting like yours, where it's so hard, and I have big boys. It's so hard to get the Fuzzybutts a part of Fuzzybutts and Friends. David, what is the name of your 11-year-old kid?
Thanks for asking. Bridger. Bridger, and at one point he was hashtag Bridger the Wonder Pup. He was, I know we'll talk a little bit about my journey, but there was a time I was associated with Morris Animal Foundation when we started the Golden Retriever Lifetime Study, and it was felt at that time that having the CEO have a participant in the study was really good, which gave me the great excuse of being able to go out and find a Golden Retriever puppy. So that was Bridger. He was the spokesdog for a long time, and he is participant number 1199 in the Morris Animal Foundation Golden Retriever Lifetime Study. We all have heart dogs.
Bridger, I've never heard that name for a dog. I really like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So cheers to his health and survived mass. So, well, ironically, he wasn't part of the Morris study, and then he developed cancer. So that's we had Ginger. I just, my memory is so bad, and I cannot recall the executive director of that study. We had her. I'm sorry,
Tiffany Gronert.
Tiffany, that's exactly right. Absolutely, thank you. And we just had a wonderful discussion about all the great work that they've done with Morris. But that's a perfect segue into your background, your origin story. David, go ahead and tell us.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
You have to get the other golden.
Oh, Breckenridge.
Oh, that's right,
Right.
Breckenridge. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Bridger and Breckenridge.
Great snowing resort. Great place to go ski.
Yeah, well, we split our time these days between Colorado and Montana, and so it's fitting.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well let's go ahead. Try not to, you've done a lot. You've done a lot with Fuzzy Butts, so let's try not to take up half of the show on your background. But please, but you've done so much. I'm kidding, of course. Take as much time as you want, but go ahead.
No, it does seem like it gets longer every time I have to tell this story, but it's I'm a veterinarian. I wanted to be one since I was a little knee high to a grasshopper. Also have a PhD in physiology, then did a postdoctoral fellowship at Colorado State University in cancer therapies. Thought I would stay in academia for the rest of my life, and the NIH luckily didn't agree and did not fund some of the grant proposals that I had put in. So I went off to private practice. For a little bit of that, I loved it. Didn't feel like I was actually getting all the impact that I could make. Applied to a million places and was so fortunate to land at Pfizer in their animal health division, which now, of course, is Zoetis. It was then and is now the largest animal health pharmaceutical company. Had a wonderful 11 years there, 7 of those in research and development, 4 of them in business development, and then had an opportunity to go to Morris Animal Foundation as their president and CEO. I was there for about 5 years. We launched Golden Retriever Lifetime Study, as well as funded many cool and exciting science studies, many of them around cancer in dogs. Certainly that's an area of emphasis, as it needs to be. Went from there to PetSmart, where I was senior vice president of PetSmart and president of PetSmart Charities in Canada and in the US. Had a great 4 years there in the animal welfare community, getting to understand that space much better. Was going to retire and live the life of a consultant, which I was very excited about. And then one of my consulting gigs happened to be a genomic diagnostics company called Vidium Animal Health. I helped them write their business plan, and it was such a great team, is such a great team, that we ended up, one night ended up being 4 years, and had a great run there. That is a successful company now. They're doing great work, being profitable, about to be acquired by a larger strategic, which is fantastic for them. But of course, nobody needs 2 CEOs in the world. So I have since started having a conversation with Embark, and I am now the executive vice president of R&D at Embark.
Yeah, cheers to your work with Vivium, but I don't want to kind of lose that, because that was why the nature of our discussion previously on a previous episode of Fussy Butts and Friends. And just want to take a second, if you can, just talk about the work they're doing. It's wonderful that you got to be there from concept to exit strategy in a few years. That's pretty amazing. But as you know, there's a lot of activity going on in the veterinary health and medicine world, and I would imagine there are a number of companies that are up and coming, I think, that are acquisition targets, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's I've actually been involved in the investment world and the mergers and acquisition world in animal health, probably even as much as I have been in actually operating some of those businesses. And it is a very interesting time for innovation, and some really great ideas coming out, and some small companies starting to get a little traction, and then they either get acquired or they sometimes merge together, or they sometimes just one investment house decides to buy a group of them and push them into one company. So there's a lot of really fun stuff going on, and the work we did at Vidium, I think, translates pretty directly to what we're doing now at Embark, in that at Vidium, cancer is a disease of DNA mutations. It's a disease of mutations. It's pretty well established. So at Vidium, we were able to take pieces of a dog's tumor, analyze it, and be able to tell you which mutations were driving that tumor's growth, or at least had a big role in that tumor being quote unquote successful. For those cancer cells think they're being successful by being able to divide uncontrollably. Of course, detrimental effects on the whole animal. So we were able to learn a lot during that time and be able to give you back a report, which also included what drugs or therapeutics exist today that could, in fact, help that dog in suppressing or eliminating that tumor in some cases. So really great work, all based on this idea that the more we know about the DNA of an animal, the more we can help them both predict what diseases they could see, but also treat those that start to develop.
Yeah, it's pretty much all about targeted therapy these days, and advanced diagnostics. Those two have to go hand in hand.
You
And
can't have
so
one, right? Right.
Absolutely. So I'm just pleased to hear that Vidium is still is doing very well, and you guys are pursuing that they're continuing, because I know the veterinary market can be a little bit tough at times in terms of adoption. That's kind of why it's one of our missions of Fuzzy Butts and Friends is to raise awareness and to talk to pet parents and let them know about some of this exciting technology that's being developed out there in the veterinary marketplace. And that's a perfect way to talk about Embark. I've been on your website. I've done some due diligence, David, and
Thank you.
I'm fascinated. I know this is another hot area of technology and interest for pet parents. So tell us about Embark.
Oh, Embark's got a great origin story. I've known about it since the original founders went out and had the idea. In fact, back to Morris Animal Foundation, these things all are fairly connected in the animal health space. Adam Boyko, one of the two brothers who founded Embark, is on the board of directors for Morris Animal Foundation now. He's also a professor at Cornell of genomics in the vet school there. So stepping back, Adam and his brother Ryan got a small grant and went around the world looking at village dogs, taking DNA samples, just cheek swabs, of village dogs around the world. And then came back, analyzed them, and came up with the best map that existed at the time of where did dogs come from? How interrelated are they? And in relation to the current modern breeds, how did all of those come? Where's the ancestry tree? And if you think about it, in many ways, dogs are, from a science standpoint, easier to do that kind of thing with than humans are. I mean, last 200 years, humans have been in pretty much all over the world, and there aren't really isolated pockets. But with dogs, particularly because of the pure breeding, selective breeding, we can get pretty specific about which dogs came from which and how closely are they related, which has a lot of ramifications in terms of health, breeding choices, and where are we going with future disease and other kinds of traits that we can find in dogs. But so what's Embark? Embark does that. You send in a cheek swab. We look at the largest set of data that's available today in the marketplace and can tell all sorts of things about your specific dog, primarily around its breed, what kinds of breeds are all into this wonderful fuzzy butt that you've got, what its ancestry is, how closely related is it to others? Do you have closely related siblings in your geographic area? Maybe you can do a meetup for second cousins. And then also, very importantly, we look at the health traits associated with that. And just in the last few years, we've branched out beyond just DNA testing to epigenetic testing, or genetic changes that happen after an animal is conceived, and also microbiome testing, where we partnered with our friends at Animal Biome to start looking at how the populations of bacteria, primarily in the gut or in the mouth, but hey, there's bacteria all over our bodies. How do those different populations impact the health and wellness of the animals that we are living with, and and how can we maybe even manipulate that?
Yes, that's listed on the things to discuss because
That was all foreshadowing, Luke. We can go into each one of them individually.
Yeah, no, you're great at doing that, and I appreciate it. Though you keep me in check, but I'm excited to learn about that because, as you know, we know that in humans, the gut, the stomach, the gastrointestinal tract is vastly more complex than we knew. It's loaded with neurons, and that gives constant feedback to the rest of us, to the rest of the organism, and that's very important on how we function and operate. So, but I just wanted to go back before we get to that, and all the different. I was just amazed at all the different tests you guys have. You guys have so many. It's amazing. Hopefully, we'll have time to really drill down on each and every one of them. But you did a really good job, David, of articulating the value proposition of Embark. Especially when you're talking about why it's important, because I didn't put it on the discussion points, but I figured you would understand why is it important that a pet parent needs to know what their breed of dog is. So, can you just maybe condensely and concisely just articulate that for our audience?
Well, I don't know if I've ever been accused of being concise, Luke, but I'll do my best.
Me neither.
Um,
I resemble that.
so, at one level, it's not. At one level, these are beautiful little creatures who come in your case, big creatures who come and share our lives with them, and we'll take them regardless, right? I mean, so at some level, does it really matter? Oh, maybe not. I could argue both ways. On the other hand, I am a huge believer in what I term prognostics. So it's not diagnostics. That's how you determine what a disease is. It's prognostics. What do I need to be mostly worried about when I see this dog? And that's both from a veterinarian standpoint, but also just a dog lover's standpoint. And we all know, anyone who spends some or all of their lives around different dogs knows that different breeds of dogs are predisposed to different things, predisposed to different behaviors, predisposed to different health conditions. And that helps clue us into what I'm supposed to be worried most about. And so as I understand, and as I start to learn more and more about how can we nail down what those dogs are really, what we should be really worried about, these tests, these genetic tests, really help us understand, breed being the first step of all of that. So, I know golden retrievers have a predilection to cancer, so mast cell tumors in particular. So when I'm massaging my old guy in the evening, and we're watching TV and I feel a lump, well, I'm not letting that go. Like that, immediately the Sharpie comes out. Immediately the next day, we're down at the real veterinarian down the street. We've got a needle going into that. We're trying to figure out what those cells are so that we can understand, is this something I need to be worried about? In another breed, pure mixed breed population, they get a bump. Maybe I'm just want to watch it for a little while. I wouldn't. That's probably a bad example because I tend to be a little proactive on these. But there are other things. There are dogs that are predisposed to gum disease, so I'll be more proactive on their gingival health and making sure that their teeth are brushed. There are other breeds that need a bunch of stimulation. Classic cattle dogs. If you stick them in an apartment and hope that they're going to be well behaved for 12 hours while you're gone, you're probably not doing yourself or the dog a service there. You need to get a job for them. And so we know so much about specific breeds. And now we have a way to genetically say, I don't know what that dog looks like, but I can promise you he is 45% German Shepherd or 25% American Staffordshire. So that's, I think, why it's important that everybody has a handle on where their dogs come from, and from a pure health standpoint. My son just got his first dog, absolute mixed breed. I saw the pictures. He could be just about anything. You could convince me. So he's got an Embark test on the way to their house right now, and we'll drill down to how old is this dog, and where did he come from?
Well, I like that you when speaking about the value proposition, you sort of said first off is, well, you don't really need it, right? And I agree with you, is because I don't know if my Pyrenees rescues are 100% Pyrenees or not, but I call them knuckleheads or ungrateful Pyrenees, and that's all I need to know them as. And Ginger calls her dog Lily, the breed, beautiful breed. So I get, I understand that viscerally why that's true, but I really like what you spoke to is for prognostics. It's and yours is a perfect case. You have two golden retrievers, and as you know, they're genetically predisposed to get cancer, and a lot.
All sorts of things.
All sorts of things. And that's just additional data that's necessary for pet parents to be able to take proper responsible care of their fuzzy butts. So data, as you and I've talked before, I'm a data guy. So any data I can get, I love data. I have mounds and mounds and terabytes of data that's unmanageable, but it's so important that you have that. Well, let's go ahead and start, since you have so many tests in this epigenetics one. That's I didn't read that. That's exciting. I know exactly what's going on with epigenetics research right now in veterinary health, and so it's exciting. So that I've added that to the list, but let's just start with the beginning. I guess what your flagship product is the breed and genetic health test. So let's start out. What is that test, and tell us about it?
Yeah, so this is, uh, I think unabashedly, it is the largest and the oldest of the genetic tests that are out there available to pet parents. We now have a database of over 2 million dogs
Wow.
that we've analyzed, which, if you think about the total population of dogs around the world, that's not a small percentage of them. And and we can tell with very precise controls where that dog came from. So the ancestry and the breed determinations, that's table stakes, and that's one of the things we do exceptionally well. We can also, with that, through bioinformatics, be able to determine the coefficient of inbreeding. So if you are going to be a responsible breeder, you can tell how closely related are these two dogs, because pedigrees only go so far. You can also determine the relatedness finder, so we can find out where those related dogs are, and not just from 2 generations back, but from multiple generations back. And so the breed and ancestry testing is really what we realize most people get attracted to this idea for. I've got a dog, kind of looks like a Pyrenees, but my next door neighbor is telling me it's also an Anatolian, but I don't know. How can I tell the difference between the two? So I'll spend the money and find the breed test. And, I sometimes call that the cocktail party result. Like, you wouldn't believe my 72-pound dog is actually 15% Chihuahua. Who could have guessed?
That's always the funniest thing. So I fostered a litter of 7 puppies.
Uh-huh.
And several of the people who adopted them have had the Embark test done on them. And they all have come up somewhat different, because they were like, how can that be? I have the brother and the sister. I had it both done. I thought it was going to be the same. I'm like, a litter of puppies can have more than one father. And they were like, oh my gosh. And so it is the funniest thing. One of them has a lot of German Shepherd in him, but his sister does not. It's really funny.
Biology is an amazing thing when we get down to these
Yeah.
multiparous babies. Yes, I know. There was a time when these genetic tests actually were a little bit uncomfortable for breeders, because you'd often find the purebreds, they're 10% something else. And
Yeah.
some of that is the test, and we've refined those tests, but sometimes it's just the fact is, for breed health, you oftentimes want to bring in the genetics from another breed. Sometimes that's less understood than it could be. But in addition to the breed testing and the ancestry testing, we also have a genetic health test. And these are 260 distinct markers that we look through the genome and be able to determine, yes, your dog has this mutation or variant specific for this disease, and either has 1 or 2 copies, either got a copy from mom or dad, or both mom and dad. And that, again, that plays very cleanly to our genetic health. What should we be looking at? So, there's a lot of retinal atrophy. So the retina deteriorates over time. Well, that's not a death sentence. There's lots of dogs going around without great vision, but if you don't know that it's coming, then that transition might be a lot harder for the dog and for the family. So, these are wonderful things that we can know, and these tests, it's as easy as a cheek swab and sending it in and paying the fee, and then you get your report back.
260 markers. How many disease states does that cover? Do you know? Thereabouts, roundabouts? Yeah.
Lots, about 260. Some of them are, to be fair, some of those are fairly rare. Some of them are found only in specific breeds, and there are variants specific to each breed, but it is the largest number that's available commercially. So, we're very proud of the work that we can do. And every year we're bringing in another dozen or so as the literature lets us know, or as our own research teams let us know that new traits are being found, then we can spike those into our existing tests.
That's a lot. 260. That's something else. You had mentioned before that your accuracy has improved in your testing process. What do you figure your accuracy is now, if that's a good metric to assess the test?
For the breeds, Luke?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah. For the so I think we test. This is only the beginning of my second month, but I
Okay.
think we test for 300 different breeds.
Okay.
And of course, the American Kennel Club only has about 160 or 180
Wow.
breeds that they've got. So we look at a lot. And I also remember I mentioned that Adam and Ryan Boyko started this crazy adventure by going out to villages all throughout the world in Africa and Southeast Asia, South America, and sampling village dogs. So the point I'm about to make is for those main breeds, for the breeds that you and I could list off of our heads, and even some of the more unique breeds that we could list off the heads, we're extremely accurate. When you start talking about New Guinean singing dogs, which is a breed,
I've got to check that out. What was
New
it?
Guinean singing dogs, then we're not as accurate because there just aren't as many of those animals in the database that we can say this is the genetic fingerprint to that breed. Also, in breeds sometimes can be a little fluid. If you look across the spaniels, there are very clear breeds of spaniel, and then they're sort of like they're spaniels.
Yeah.
Those are spaniels. And so for those, we get, whether a dog is 16% or 16.5%, I think everyone has to recognize that those numbers are only as good as the data sets. But again, we have 2 million dogs in that data set, and it's about as good as it can get.
Yeah, but even in addition to the accuracy of the determination of the breed, which 300 plus breeds, I can count maybe a dozen or two dozen off the top of my head. I feel so bad. But in addition to that, though, it just you get all the additional data as well that your test delivers, and I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, we also do an annual health survey, Luke, that we send it out to representative samples of our database and ask about, have you seen this? Have you been diagnosed with X, Y, or Z? Which then helps us feed back to the larger database and generate, it's a perpetually good cycle where the more data that we have, the more accurate we can become, which allows us to get more data in turn. And then for those 260 health traits, those are very specifically accurate. We know which C to G transposition or T to A, which one happened, and we know exactly how to look for it. And if an animal has one or two copies of those variants, we're very confident in that result.
Yeah, that's actually, you spoke precisely to my point. I kind of dropped it and missed it. I looked over my notes and got confused for a second. But in addition to knowing the breeds, from my perspective, the genetic health test is equally important, if not more important, because you can be 90% golden retriever and not have the marker for certain disease states. So to me, it's more important. The more important data are the markers, the health markers, and perhaps the behavioral markers. So you know which of the troublemakers to send to the troublemaker Fuzzybutts school of behavior.
Boy, and we are just starting this. I mean, 260 markers is a great number, and I'm very proud of the work that came through all the people before me. When I start getting excited is when I start thinking about polygenic traits, the genes, traits that require multiple genes, switches flipped in the right order, and then how can we take some of those things that we just know are, anybody who's been around dogs knows is genetically linked, like behavior, like allergies, like diabetes or other metabolic diseases or osteoarthritis. We know that there's a ton of different genes, and we're just starting to glimpse the computing power and the databases that'll allow us to tap into those and start to be able to give really good guidance for, say, the shelter communities. That litter that Ginger mentioned earlier. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we could say, hey, if you're a marathoner, this is the dog for you. Because this dog needs to run 20 miles a day, and you're going to love that. You're going to have the best training partner in the world. This one over here, yeah, no, he's 30% basset hound. You don't want to have him running anywhere. Let him sit on the couch and be your best friend. You know, let him be your dad's best friend, so he can lay with his head on his lap for 25 hours a day.
Right, or the dog has a marker for osteoarthritis, and making him a marathon dog or a running dog, exercising him extraneously over many years is a recipe for disaster in their old age. So that's critical information. You're right. It's a lifestyle, it's a behavior, lifestyle a test as well.
Those things could be great when we get there. You know, we're not there yet.
Right.
But back when you and I were young, Luke, and Ginger was barely out of her school clothes. What was I trying to say? When you were really young, and Luke and I were slightly younger, like back in the 2008, 2009 period, we thought that this genetic stuff was just going to go like that. Like, now that we've sequenced it, it's all easy. We'll just have to look for the patterns. What we've found since then is that it's not easy. It's highly complex, that there isn't one gene that determines this, that there's a bunch, and it's a different ways and weights. But on the upside, on the good side of that, the computing power that we're starting to see now, the addition of AI and machine learning into some of these questions allows us these tools, which will really open up the questions that we can answer and get down to the fundamental. I mean, believe me, I lived the hype cycle of DNA and how disease will be no more. Well, no, disease is still here, and but it's a lot better. I'd much rather be a person or an animal with cancer in 2024 than a person or an animal with cancer in 2000. So we're making progress.
I was just going to ask you about AI. I don't know if you can see it. It's right there, because I was just thinking about the vast amounts of data that you're having to analyze and crunch. The more, and you said it perfectly, is that that traits and genetics are so incredibly complex. There's a whole cascade of things that some genes are shut off under certain circumstances, and it really is complex. And it's vastly more complex than humans, it seems like, are able to analyze. And I was going to ask you whether you're using AI tools to be able to discover unique markers, discover unique links and traits that are pretty much undiscoverable by, or at least it's so much data.
Absolutely.
Your data is only going to get bigger and bigger.
Of the dozen or so PhDs that we have working at Embark, more than half of them are computational biologists who look at biological questions through programming, through machine learning, through AI, and being able to enter these queries and see what the data can come back at. You're right. It's more complex than the human brain can handle. But the good news is the human brain doesn't need to be the one handling it. They just need to be able to direct it and ask the right questions. And we've got a terrific team doing just that.
Yeah, and analyze the output and be able to make the proper correlations and everything. But yeah, it's amazing. I use AI a lot as a collaborative tool. I'm jumping the gun here, but I don't want to lose this, because the data and all the information that you're obtaining and analyzing is so critical for pet parents. And I had it on my notes. What about research? Are you guys publishing any studies?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one of those that we're ongoing. Hey, Luke, if you could have been on my Zoom call this morning at 9 a.m., you could have seen a lot of that exact question. We do quite a lot of collaborative research. We have a standing relationship with both Cornell Vet School as well as Utrecht. We clearly could expand on that. Then the question of what's the best way to get that information out, whether it's through traditional media like you guys, whether it's by our own sets of white papers, whether it's through published journal articles, all of those things are on the table. And yes, all of them have been done quite a lot. We do a lot of research. There is a question, about, and every organization, I'm sure you follow the company 23andMe. They're having a very difficult time, and for disclosure, Anne Wojcicki, the founder of 23andMe, was one of the earliest investors in Embark Veterinary, because it's same theme.
Right.
They've had a difficult time translating that into commercial success. So that company is going through some challenges right now, because they said, look, the real value here is in research and discovery and finding new therapeutic programs. So obviously we're trying to learn from everybody else's mistakes as well as our own. And so there is, I think, some really interesting questions around what's the best path to get this new knowledge out there. But we do research all the time. We are constantly asking those questions to our own data sets, as well as collaborations with other really smart groups.
Yeah, well, I think I'm a firm believer in getting as much data, high quality data to pet parents as quickly as possible, because the pace of innovation is nonstop. It's only going to get exponentially faster, and so that pet parents can make the right decisions, the correct best decisions, according to the best available data. So if you guys ever have an interest in discussing with Puppy Up a way about publishing some data or doing something, that's something for us to look at in the future. I kind of feel like Ginger and I had this discussion previously, is that the better job that we can do at Fuzzybutts and Friends of not only educating but improving the outcome. The focus of Puppy Up is cancer in companion animals and its relation to human cancer, but it's true of all disease states. Is it that the sooner that you have the quality data, the right data, potentially the better the outcome. So whatever we can do to help you, we'd be happy to do that. All right, so we still have a number of, you're welcome. My pleasure. And all right, so because I do know that penetrating the veterinary market, the animal health market, is kind of tough. Getting adoption from pet parents can be tough. And so whatever we can do to help. All right, we still have
and also there's just a lot of misunderstanding out there. And I think one of the things that many veterinarians like myself would acknowledge is we haven't done a terrific job as a profession about getting pet parents all the information that they need. Nutrition is a great example. There's a bunch. Behavior is another good example. Pet parents would love to go to their veterinarian and get honest, good answers. They're always going to be honest because veterinarians tend to be really nice people, but you can't be an expert at everything. And so how do you get that qualified, characterized, well understood data so that people have actionable information that they can do, because everybody wants the best thing for their pets.
It's funny that you said that about nutrition, because I had a lot of respect for my veterinarian, but I was asking about, what to feed my dog that now has protein in her urine. And she's like, well, maybe get a lower protein food.
Let me guess. Well, I think you should just have a high quality food, Ginger, from a reputable brand that has low protein in it.
There you go. There, pretty much.
I love my profession. I really do. And honestly, I've said the same thing, but it's
more
not
than
really
she did.
Right.
Yeah, two more. You said two more than she did, because it was like lower protein. So I went to Hollywood Feed, and I was like, okay, they put their employees through like 40 plus hours of food. It's like, okay, here's my question to you. And the guy said, I don't know that, but let me go find, and so he came back with an answer, and then whew, it was an answer. All right.
To pet parents. I mean, I think whatever it looks like going forward, veterinarians can't be the only stop. We need to be a stop.
Right.
And clearly we're trained to do a lot of things. But genetics, I can tell you how fast most general practicing veterinarians' eyes will glaze over when you come in and say, hey, look, I just want to talk to you for half an hour about genetics.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about veterinarians many times.
Myself.
I couldn't agree with you more about veterinarians being, in many cases, the rate limiting step to adoption of novel technologies, therapeutics, and so on and so forth with pet parents, because they're either not educated, or the bigger concern is I found with some veterinarians they don't like to sell. They're not good salespeople. They feel like there's a communication gap between the pet parent and the veterinarian, in the sense that the veterinarian doesn't want the pet owner to feel like they're always selling them new things. Right. And then would imagine you also have the other problem with country vets not probably doing a very good job of explaining the necessity, the reason to get a breed and genetic health test. They probably wouldn't do a good job of that. So, well, that's why I think
if they tried.
That's why I think podcasts like ours are so important, and we're doing our best to get as many pet parents listening because it is important and knowing genetic markers. So the number one test, your flagship test, the breed and genetic health test, guys, it's absolutely fundamental for all the reasons we mentioned. But for me, the most important is the disease tracking. Let's go
I
on.
just hold on just a second, Luke. So I want to just be clear. So if I send in, get the Embark test, is there a separate one for the DNA so I can find out what Smiley is besides who knows what? And does the genetic health test come with that?
Yes. If you order that package, it comes and
Okay.
it all is coming from a cheek swab, Ginger.
Okay.
Yeah,
Run
but
the cheek
that's a
swab.
good question, though. I forgot to ask you, how easy I'm sure it's easy for pet parents, right?
It is. Go to embarkvet.com and it says for pet parents up on the top. Drop that down. There are 3 products, and we're going to talk about the other
Okay.
2. But yes, breeding.
But in terms of actually
There is a breeder's test, which focuses more on the health traits because a breeder doesn't need to know what breed my dog is. And we also have some veterinary specific. So, when I run my dogs through Embark a couple of years ago before I was associated with the company, I got a much, I'll just say it's longer, that goes into each of those health and which, if any. Now she doesn't have any, she came up with 100% clean score, which ironically, you mentioned all those other things, reasons the veterinarians don't like them. I actually had somebody apologize to me because they ran the genetic tests and it came up 100% healthy. And I said, is there another diagnostic that you would ever say, I'm really sorry, I ran that test because it came up healthy? No, there's not. There's all the time. That's hey, great news for these 260 traits. We're all clear. But Luke, I think you wanted to move on to the age test, or at least
no, I actually did see the professional breeder test, and I think that is important because breeders, the responsible breeders, we just did a podcast a couple of episodes ago about the importance of being a responsible breeder, and tracking data, tracking diseases is paramount to them, and they look for more specific data, and I think extensive data, more of like a pedigree data as well. So it's important that you have a tool for them.
That coefficient of inbreeding is a critical piece of information because if you're pick a breed, a Scotty breeder, you can't tell, even with very good pedigrees, you can tell 3 or 4 generations away, but it's apocryphal. Nobody actually has the data, but it's said that every Cavalier King Charles Spaniel was bred from 4 origination dogs. So there's going to be some degree of inbreeding. The question is it too much? And how do you balance that? So yes, yes, plus 1 and a thumbs up to responsible breeders. Probably both know more about genetics and the subtleties that we talked about a little bit ago, but also are more engaged in that the genetic counseling. They kind of understand that more. And we also do have aborted theriogenologist on staff who's a veterinarian, Jenna Dockwater. She's fantastic. And she also does a lot of consulting for breeders who say, hey, I'm seeing this. Can I balance this kind of stuff off of? And so, yep, we're heavy into the breeder programs. And I think that there's a lot there because as much as adoption is a critical part of having dogs, there are and should, in my mind, will always be breeders and as long as we can give them the tools to be responsible and bring out the best animals out there, it only helps the whole dog population.
Absolutely. Yeah. If we're going to get rid of puppy mills and things of that nature, then the role of a breeder, a responsible breeder, becomes paramount. And more importantly, genetic testing it has to be one of the tools in their toolkits, essentially.
Someone told me once, Luke, that if we made it really hard for people to be responsible breeders, all you're going to have left is irresponsible breeders. It's hard for me to refute that logic. So hopefully we help them a little bit that way.
Excellent. Yeah, the only reason why I'm trying to get through these is because you have many more tests, and we try to keep it to an hour and a 10. So I'm not. We always have so much to talk about, and you're always a wealth of good information and knowledge. So, but let's go ahead and get to the age test. Jim was mentioning that. Go ahead, please.
Really cool stuff. So methylation. DNA gets methylated Actually, it stops being methylated over time. We know that there is a relationship with how much methylation you can find in the DNA. It happens on specific sections of the DNA. So the lower the methylation, the older the animal. Now, there are some other aspects that also reduce. So smoking in humans, for instance, reduces methylation. And so it accelerates the aging process. Our test is a chronological age test. So it tells us within a range of, based on the methylation, the range of ages of that animal. And, you know, for those of us who were able to get our dogs as puppies, you might question whether how important that is. I mentioned just a second ago, my son just brought home their first dog. He's a rescue. He is a young adult. There is no way I know how old Diego is. I can't look at his teeth. I can't look at his coat. I can't look at his nails. All I can say is, yeah, he's a young adult. With our age test, we can actually get down to a pretty tight range and it's good in the middle part. When they're really young, methylation rates are a little bit less easy to nail down, and when they're older. But we also give a birthday, which is the midpoint of the range that we know. But you know, frankly, Diego doesn't care if it's exactly the day that he was born, and he gets he'll get a puppuccino, I'm sure, on whatever day it is that gets decided.
His gotcha day. It's always the birthday, right? It's the gotcha day.
Yeah.
I always just, if all the rescues that I don't know the date of birth, I just go to the 31st, the end of the month, to make it just round up to the 31st. But you are correct. I mean, you know, we were just having a conversation about with the folks at PetDX, and when they should start doing cancer screening with their technology. And age is part of that. And they just released a very extensive study, a couple thousand dogs they looked at. And so, what they were trying to learn is they're trying to learn of all the different breeds, at what average age do they start developing cancer? So that, as you know, like with Bernese mountain dogs, histiocytic sarcoma, could be as early as 2 or something. So,
yeah.
So you and I both know that cancer is no longer thought of as a disease of old age in dogs, and so knowing the age, the precise age of the dog is very important. The fuzzy butt is very important.
Sure
So
it is. Sure is.
some people would dismiss this as like, why do I care? But it's very important.
Goes back to our health questions, right? I mean, you know, what am I looking for in this dog at this time? If it's an adult dog, then my list is very broad. If it's a 7-year-old large breed dog, then my list gets narrowed significantly. And so those things help us, not just again as veterinarians, but as pet parents and pet lovers, to find out what should I be watching for in this dog.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that you give a date of birth to. That's pretty good. That's the
I do too. I will tell you that the scientists inside our organization were not super happy about that at that point. And I said, look, I sympathize with everybody's viewpoint here, but at the end of the day, I'm kind of glad that Diego is going to have a birthday that you look at, and the gotcha day.
Gotcha day.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, mine has a birthday and a gotcha day, because Grayson was clearly, both of my boys were clearly born before me. They were started out as Great Pyrenees, and then once I adopted them, they became ungrateful Pyrenees. So I switched a genetic switch somewhere. I messed up their epigenetics.
That's epigenomics right there.
That's epigenomics right there. As soon as I adopted it, it changed everything. Speaking of, let's go ahead. I wanted to talk about the gut one. We'll get to that next, but let's go ahead and talk about epigenetics, since I know less about that, and I'm so excited to hear about it.
So epigenetics is the age test. Epigenetics is, in writ large, is any change to the DNA after the animal has been conceived. Methylation is the kind of the first step in that, but there are a whole host of different epigenomic changes that happen. And again, as we learn more, as our computing power can get more, as we develop these tools, we're going to be able to do things like, hey, your dog is pre-diabetic. Now, what does pre-diabetic mean? Well, we know what it means in humans with our A1C scores, or our fasting glucose levels that are sort of elevated, but they're not really over the line yet. epigenomic changes will help us understand that, and we can maybe institute dietary changes before we actually have full-blown diabetes in our cats or in our dogs, as an example. Same thing with osteoarthritis. This is sort of a watch this space area where things can get really exciting, and I think it's going to happen sooner than later. Maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, we should be able to roll out more than just age testing with methylation. Although I think methylation.
Yeah, at that point you become a screening company, and it becomes an annual screening test. Is that, exactly what has happened genetically over the past year that could potentially change disease states or disease outcomes. And as you know, with humans, screening is so important. It's the difference between having a bad outcome with a disease or having a more favorable one. So that's exciting. All right, let's get to the gut health test. I think that's also a fascinating area of research. Tell us about that.
Agreed. So this is a partnership actually with a company called Animal Biome out of Oakland, California. Great company, highest levels of science. But the microbiome, as we all know, is just the population of bacteria that exist, bacteria, fungi, yeast, phages, viruses that exist in coordination with us. And if that balance gets out of whack, then bad things happen. Can happen with chronic ear infections or oral disease or GI disease. Right now we have a gut health test, which looks at the fecal biome. So we send in a sample of poop and they can tell us whether we're in or out of balance. And then we also have some supplements that can help with that. Same thing with the oral health. You can say, hey, there's a lot of bad actors in that mouth. We need to do some things to help speed up and facilitate that. Obviously, dental cleanings and celebrating Pet Dental Health Month, Ginger, is critical too.
Yeah, so you have both the gut health and the oral health test, and both of them are the same way. Well, let's talk about the testing process, because that making it easy, you said that earlier, is so important for pet parents and also practitioners and professionals, because God knows our lives are too complicated and noisy to begin with. So, how easy is it for pet parents to use all these kits?
For every one of them on the website, order the kit. Kit gets shipped to your house. It's got instructions in it, including links to YouTube videos to help us understand exactly how we're doing it. But I'll be honest, it's as easy as this.
Right. That's what I wanted. That was the sound bite I wanted. It's just a mouth swab. That's all it is.
It's a mouth swab, man. He's in both the age test as well as the genetic health test. And it's because we're just picking up cells in the off the cheek, and that'll tell us everything that we need to know.
So everything except the gut health, which is poop.
Right.
Everything else is just an oral swab. It's that easy.
An oral swab.
And then you send it back into to corporate.
Yep. So it goes into the case. Depends on which test you're asking, exactly where it gets sent. But it's about a 2 to 3 week turnaround time. We try to make that faster, but sometimes our suppliers, we're working with Illumina for most of our genetic testing, which is a massive company. And sometimes things get a little slowed down, but all in, it's a 2 or 3 week turnaround time. There are going to be tests that we're developing that are on the whiteboard that we might be able to get an almost immediate turnaround time. Those will be more useful in a clinical setting. But as you pointed out, Luke, with screening tests, with this one and done kind of test, which is the genetic health and ancestry, you're not going to do that every year. Those are 2 to 3 weeks, and you get the report back through email.
Yeah, I would also think that part of your marketing strategy, I guess maybe your adoption strategy, is also working with insurance companies, because you have to make these affordable. But more importantly, as you know, is what I said before, is that an early screening or early diagnostics can make the difference between a terrible disease outcome and a much more favorable one, which invariably almost always translates to money. And if the insurance carriers are the ones paying out for it, they have the most economic interest or the most skin in the game. And it just seems like they should be pushing or work. Are you working with them on having to help defray the cost of screening? Because again, it leads to the overall benefit of the health of the fuzzy butt.
Your mouth to Nationwide's ears. No, those conversations are happening. I have great friends throughout that part of our industry. I think everyone acknowledges what you just said, that that's a great end state for us to get to. I think we're still, you know, I mean, for as large as large a part of the industry as it is and will be, pet insurance is still fairly new, and it's still in its fairly youth stages. We don't, for instance, have the actuarial science down that human health insurances have. So there's a lot of still work to be done. My guess is that's exactly where we're going, Luke.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and you know, it's exciting too because they provide such a critical part and a role, but you know, that to me the actual data, which is, as you know, which is the big piece missing in animal health, because there's just no one out there tracking animal health data and having the actual actuarial data. That would be tremendous. But insurance carriers are, you know, I found it fascinating listening to you that you made the mention that insurance companies, the adoption rate for insurance is still relatively low, but you're absolutely right. There's so many pet parents that don't have their fuzzy
It's
butts
still
insured.
most of the time we estimate it's at less than 5%, probably closer to 3%, but it is the
Wow.
fastest growing sector in animal health. But you know, if you're 2% and you're growing at 100%, you're still only 4% at the at the end of the year. So it's
Absolutely.
still low numbers, but we're getting there, and it's very young. Like some of these pricing models, some of the business models around insurance are still haven't really been tested at scale yet. And so, you know, with time, I'm as impatient as anybody else when it comes to the health of our pets. But you know,
I
been
think we're
around.
all trying. I think we're all trying to speed up adoption. Just we're getting better and better tools. We've got more exciting things coming out. We just need to get them paid for and to the pet parents. But I went to your website, David, and the kits are all very affordable though. They're all very reasonably priced.
Well, you know, I mean, look, I'm never going to write somebody else's check for them. You know, what's affordable to me and where I see the value, I certainly think we were a very good value for the money that we ask for. We're trying to broaden our range of options and opportunities for folks, but for now, I agree with you. I don't think it. And you know, if you go through. We both sell directly from our website as well as on Amazon. I think you can, you know, there's all types of ways to pay for things on Amazon that yeah, that it should be a fairly affordable thing for most pet parents, especially I think when you see the value that if you don't know the genetic background of your pet, if you don't know how old they are, those are key health contributing information. That is key data for us to have in our minds when we think about the health and well-being of our pets.
All right. Well, tell everyone where they can go to go to your website, learn more about your kits, and actually buy them on your website.
Easy enough. It's embarkvet.com, and it's a pretty easy to navigate website. There's lots of resources in there as well about if you're interested in how those tests work, or what you should get, how to expect things. And then we've got a terrific customer service team as well at Embark who really know their stuff, and so their questions they can always pick up the phone and do it the old-fashioned way.
Your website is very. Go ahead, please.
David, is it Embark Vets with an S on it or not? No. Okay.
VET. Yep. So EMBARKVET, Victor, Echo, Thomas.
Okay.
And
yeah, and the website's good. I like it a lot. It's got a easy interface, and it's very functional. All right, David. So as we wind things down, is there anything that I left off the list, or that you like to message for the pet parents out there?
No, I can't think of anything. I think the really take home message is genetic information about the history and the breed of your dog is not just interesting, it's also vital, and it's a very important piece of their health record, if you will. And there are tests out there. We think ours is by far the best, but you know, we're one of many tests that pet parents can lean into to get that information and fill in those pieces of the puzzle that we just can't otherwise fill in. So encourage it for all people.
Right. Yeah, the data that you get from your test is not just cocktail dinner, cocktail party data. It's quality, good quality health data that could really make the difference in your relationship with your fuzzy butt. So I can't recommend it more to our audience out there. Go to embarkvet.com and learn everything you can about all the different wonderful tests, and more importantly, start looking forward to the epigenetics test and the screens, because that's to me, that's where it gets really exciting as a pet parent, because the less I have to worry about 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 the health of my kids, the happy I already have too many things to worry about, I'm sure.
That's right. That's right. If we can leverage a few tools and answer some of those questions for ourselves,
That's
why
right.
not?
That's right. All right, Ginger, we've
Right.
reached the time of the show. Is there did you have did I interrupt you?
No, not at all.
Okay, you and I are always constantly talking, so that's fine. I just sometimes I'm inattentive to those things. Ginger, we've reached the time of the show where I ask you, did I screw anything up? I know I screwed things up this time, but did I leave anything out? Is there anything left other than the cancer tip of the week by the Puppy Up Foundation? Are you have
I
that ready
cannot
for us?
think of anything that either one of you left out. So, of course, I don't know everything about what David does, but okay, if you talked me into that the DNA for the breed, like you said, like man, I was just kind of maybe I don't really need that, but the whole the health test thing. Now I'll have it done on my two young ones for sure. So my cancer tip was checking for lumps and bumps. And David, you mentioned earlier that you found, if you find any lumps or bumps on your Goldens, you get out the Sharpie and mark it and then go to the vet. Well, Puppy Up has a little handout that we give out. And plus you can also email us at info@puppyup.org, info@puppyup.org. And we have a sheet that tells you exactly how to mark your dog, get the Sharpie out if it's whatever color Sharpies you have, depending, or you get the white out, if you have a black dog and you can't mark it with the black one because that's the most common color. So we have a whole list of that, and then on the front of it we have that those diagrams, of the dogs that are kind of like this, and you can mark that the vets have, so that you can mark on there where it is, and then on that sheet give it to your vet with the Sharpie or the whiteout or whatever, and then they can find it. I know one of my dogs had some lumps and bumps. I wanted my vet to check out, and I did that. And he was like, because she was having her teeth cleaned or something. Teeth cleaning, February, dental month. I don't think it was February though. But anyway, he said, I would have never found those if I didn't have the sheet and the color markers, like you didn't crayon all over her. So
most embarrassing thing as a veterinarian you can do, by the way, when someone says, I've got this lump, it's on his left side, and you're spending 15 minutes trying to interrogate every square centimeter, and it's just not there. And then, but marking it, I think it's a awesome key piece.
Yeah. Also, if you have a dog with really thick hair, sometimes you can't find the lump. I mean, how I find them on some of the fuzzier butts that I have that are really thick hair, it's like,
I don't know. It's not good. But when you get it, you put your finger on it. You won't let you call anybody else in the house. Can you get me a Sharpie? I need it now because I can't.
Oh my gosh!
I cannot lose this. Yes,
I can't lose this. And I have even couldn't find any nobody's around. Like get like a closest pair of scissors, and then clip it, and then I still can't find it because you can't shave it with the scissors. Yeah.
Crazy dogs.
But and the other thing I was going to say is, I don't want to step on any veterinarian's toes, but have it aspirated. Don't just take it and let the vet tell you to watch it. Just, observe it and see if there are any changes. What are you watching for? I mean, just stick a needle in it and find out.
What so that book right there. Is Small Animal Clinical Oncology by Withrow and McEwen. Steve Withrow was my mentor, my boss, my advisor during my postdoctoral fellowship. And he used to say, when in doubt, cut it out. And the 4 most dangerous words in oncology is, let's just watch it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. I didn't remember that Withrow was your mentor. Yeah, he's grandfather. Yeah, one of the grandfathers.
Yeah.
Oncology. I used to have my former studio office. I used to have all three of the books or two of the books, I think there. And I actually read it too. It's very useful. But I think the recommendation, Ginger, is there are some lumps and bumps that are too small to aspirate. And so I just wanted to give that caveat that you have to be able to draw out some fluid out of the lump or bump, because I know I've tried to do that. What's that?
You do need cells.
Yeah,
be
you
able
need
to
some
put
cells to look
out
at.
there.
But
I remember one specifically on Hudson was so small that they couldn't
that's
get
right.
any cells.
That's
Right.
what I was thinking about. We took because I'm the guy is like anything, as soon as anything pops up on my fuzzy butts, I take him to the vet. Let's have a look, and they're like, no, it's too small. You can't look at it yet. So, all right, that's great tips. That's a great tip for the week, though, Ginger. Thank you, and thank you to the Puppy Up Foundation for the cancer tip of the week. And now, before we sign off, I want to thank you also to our sponsor for this episode is Genie's Therapeutics. If you want a great CBD formulation for your fuzzy butt, Genie's Therapeutics is a way to go. My fuzzy butt, Indiana, takes it twice a day, and his mobility and his mood, he used to be a lot grumpier. He's happier now that he's on Genie's. You can find out more about Genie's Therapeutics at www.geniestherapeutics with an S.com. I found that out. So, all right, everyone, I want to thank Dr. David Haworth to come onto our episode today to talk about Embark and all the wonderful testing technologies they have out there and all the wonderful innovative products that are coming out over the next couple of years. So please go to embarkvet.com to learn more about them. Everybody, we'll see you next week. Oh, you can watch this episode. I recommend you do it. David's a handsome guy and he's very animated. And you can watch it on our YouTube channel at fuzzybutstudios.com. And you can also listen to this on your podcast platform, such as iHeartRadio or Spotify. Until next week, everyone, love on your fuzzy butts. Puppy up. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.